Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Nicholas Feutz at Lead-Based Studios. I'm going to be finishing up this sketch of what's eventually going to be a tattoo design for my arm. Now I've already drawn out the sketch in a previous video, as you can see in the background there. The original sketch right here just actually got the crest around the back side of it. This will be the crest that I'm actually going to be working on. I'm going to make the top of it sort of look more like feathers, and that'll be bridging around from her top to her arm. And I'm going to make the bottom kind of look more like the sort of Thor-esque hammer, or give it that kind of base of a shield look. So I'm going to start off by overlaying it, and anyone can call this tracing, call it tracing all you want, but it's just a way of keeping the image separate when working in graphic design or working in graphic production. Sometimes it's a lot easier to be able to keep the pieces separated and then just interlace them in Photoshop and make any touch-ups and so forth. You could always adjust scale that way. So considering we're in a digital world, I figured no harm done here. I'll just draw it separately. And I'm actually going to mimic what I'm doing on this right side over on the left. I'm not even going to bother drawing the left because I know it's just going to be a mirror image of it. However, I still want an idea of scale as to how big it's going to be. So if I just draw the one side overlap it to the other side, I may find out later on it's even, it's too wide, or the proportions of the feathers that I draw later may not be fit the way I want to the body. So here I'm just kind of laying out what dead center would be, and then I'm kind of giving the basis of where the bottom of the crest would be, or the bottom of the shield would be, and then I'm starting to lay in the basic shapes of where I want the body of the feathers to be, because I want it to kind of look like spread wings. So I'm just putting in very light lines, spacing them fairly evenly, and as I'm coming down towards the bottom, they're going less vertical, more horizontal, to give that fanned out look, like a hand or a deck of cards fanned out in a hand. And I'm adding some rigid shapes here instead of just bringing it to a point. As I said, as an homage to the sort of Norwegian Thor's hammer, that original Celtic design, or Norwegian design, sorry. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and come in here and sort of establish where the inside of the crest will be. Now, granted, this will be overlapped by the figure as she's kind of coming to the foreground, but I still need an established middle ground area of the Celtic knotwork. So I've established its boundary along the outside, along the inside, and now I'm just going to start going in and darkening in essentially the feather shapes, which will be the side of the knot that's closest to us, so it'll stand out more predominantly than the side of the knot that tends to fall away. The eye will just sort of be driven away from it. And I wanted to recreate the look of an actual wing, so instead of just doing one feather sticking out, as the knot comes back towards the body, it also loops back around again, sort of resembling a shorter feather. So it almost has like a second layer of feathers behind it, with the longer feather sticking out like an actual extended wing. So you'll see as I start to finish this up here, and cut that to the inside. I almost kind of went for more of like a ribbon shape. You'll see as I start to unravel more and more that I didn't really want so much just a like smooth, loopy, curvy thing. I wanted almost like a Christmas ribbon that was definitely two-dimensional, really flat, so you could definitely tell the differences in the folds, so that when it fans out wide for the feathers, it really stands out. So here's that little inner part I was talking about, where it cuts out a little bit and creates like the shape of a second layer of feathers. And as I started doing that more and more, I kind of got the idea to add that to my heritage. The McGann name traced back, I ended up finding out they were known as noble horse lords, either the trainer of horse for noblemen or something along those lines, but that was basically how they described it, as noble horse lords. I figured, well, that kind of explained my affinity for animals, but At the same time, with the crest, there's also a horseshoe in it. So working this double loop design into these feathers also kind of included that horseshoe aspect and that part of heritage to my own tattoo. So here I'm kind of taking my time with these bottom feathers, starting to think, well, I've established one pattern up top, and I want to break from that and do something different for the bottom to really establish that the feathers are almost blending into the bottom part of the knotwork that'll be appearing on the bottom. So instead of it just being one rigid pattern all the way down, and then boom, the knotwork that forms the bottom part of the crest, instead the feathers themselves almost sort of wiggle out and become more knots than they are specific feathers, or more loose ribbon, I guess would be a better way of describing it. So as I was saying, here's where I'm starting to break from it. They're not quite holding the tight feather tip. They actually have another loop around the outside as well. Just start creating like the frame of what will be the bottom part of the crest. So here's where I know I'm definitely lost. I myself, not too huge on doing Celtic knotwork. I've actually never really done it a whole lot. I think a lot of people doodle in their notebooks and stuff. And that was one of the weird things I think I've never actually done. I doodle faces, I'll doodle figures, but I've never just randomly started a design and then carried it across a whole notebook page. So I've never really been one to just sort of fill an area in with just directionless doodles, I guess. So what I'm taking from previous examples I've seen is that there's a set pattern in designs, almost like a geometric point-to-point loop system. So geometrically, you take a full circle, you cut it into 20, and then space out the circumference of that circle 20 times, and then just sort of draw loops kind of from one to the other. And then the same thing based off of drawing triangles or drawing other like leaf shapes. So what I've kind of started doing here is sort of just drawing shapes that are geometric enough that I can kind of start working point to point in and through and around them, or even utilizing them for that matter. Now once again, knowing we're going to mirror this from the right to the left without actually drawing the left side, I have to keep in tradition that with a Celtic knot, it's all one knot. It's all one strand. I kind of broke from that because there is actually, I believe, a secondary and a third strand in the bottom that they're only just connected to themselves. But there is one major strand that goes all the way from the right side to the left side, and I established that by having a connection point in the very, very middle, which you'll see in a minute here when I get to it. So I've already started laying in those kind of horseshoe shapes like I was referring to before, sticking with that very geometric basic shape. And here I come down for the sharp pointy tail because I knew I kind of wanted like a spear tip at like the bottom, so the ribbon sort of overlaps and comes to a point, but I don't finish it. So it's right on the mirror line, if you will, where if it mirrors over to the other side, that ribbon's going to connect and continue on the left side of it. And then right about coming up here. I'm going to make the connection to the top part that'll continue that ribbon back to the right and left side. A little bit, but there's the bottom, there's the spear tip. So here I'm mentally kind of tracing around saying, yep, it'll go all the way across and then come back. And I just got to make sure whatever I do up here then doesn't leave an open end, and I'll be fine. Because I've got two open ends right down there in the middle and at the very bottom. And because they're open ends in the mirrored line, that'll connect left and right. Now for me, I'm definitely a child of the 90s, so I'm a huge fan of the Snow Tiger t-shirts, the dragon and flames type of t-shirts, and the lightning and dinosaur type stuff with the skulls and everything. I'm definitely a fan of those shirts. I mean, I've gone to plenty of county fairs, and I've bought one or two of those shirts at least in my time. So when it comes to doing a sort of fanned out feathers thing, I think even without the Valkyrie in the background, I think it's an interesting enough design. I think I would probably still have it tattooed on my arm, maybe wrap around the bicep and tricep without an image in the middle, so I could actually stretch that out wider and have it just fit and kind of cup around the deltoid. I mean, if this was to be squat and even wider, it could probably be done as like a tramp stamp on a girl. It wouldn't look that bad. It's masculine enough, and yet it's just, I want to say curvy. I mean, just kind of soft and light-hearted enough that a girl will probably take to this design too. In fact, I'll know for sure when I get feedback from my fiance. She'll let me know. If she actually wanted the tattoo herself, she'll speak up. She'll say so. So as you can see, I've started off with just those little horseshoe shapes. And just little loops here and there from one point to the other point. You kind of work from like a pinball effect. You kind of go from one edge of the area to the other edge of the area and back again. Or if you stop somewhere in the middle, you stop and change direction, but you keep going to the other side. The flow of Celtic knotwork, I think, usually works the best that way, when it just goes from one adjacent side to another, but if it stops in the middle, it does some kind of loop or entanglement around something else, then it keeps going. So here I'm kind of following what I've already laid down, finding what kind of gaps I've left behind, and just sort of thickening up some of the lines. Then you drop a line on just to tell yourself where the ribbon's going, and then you have to draw one, right next to it to make it look like it's actually thick. And some of the times in doing that, if you've already drawn some of them, you're already establishing what's on top and then what falls behind. And as the drawing progresses, as you keep adding layers of knots, it'll start to look like, well, obviously this layer he drew first, and then this layer he drew second, and then third. So what you'll see when I finally go into inking on later is I've actually changed it. I'll kind of go over the lines, I'll look where they are, which one's overlapping, and then I'll do the reverse. I'll maybe bring the one all the way in the back, bring that one to the front, and that adds some 3D depth to the overlapping, so it bridges beyond just the flat left and right, up and down. So it bridges beyond just the left and right, up and down type of knotwork, but also bridges it into the three-dimensional forward and back into the depth of the actual image. Yeah, please forgive my forehead and my hair in the foreground there. So I've been kind of experimenting with where to toss the webcam when recording this, and so far this is kind of the best location, and I should show a picture of it. It's actually an M&M's tube that's duct taped to one of my desk lamps that has one of the most flexible, bendable arms, but it's my halogen lamp. If I was to turn that one on with the webcam, it would probably start melting the M&M tube. So I've got that tube with the stick body of my webcam kind of shoved into the tube, and it's just kind of hanging out and looking down. So if you notice a bit of wiggle and a bit of wobble too, it's unfortunate. The desk is still on carpet, so as it wobbles, it magnifies all the way up through the arm of the light into the camera. So I apologize for that. I hope you don't get motion sick from it.